Well, hello, readers. Trisha Goyer here, and I am so excited to have Amanda Dykes here with us. And we're talking about her new book, Born of Gilded Mountains. I have been enjoying it. There's so many elements. I can't wait to dig into it. There's like an element recently when I was like, because I totally didn't see something coming that was
Love
amazing. So,
that.
first of all, welcome, Amanda. And why don't you just start telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love the community here. I love the readers, and as a reader myself, it's just a wonderful place to be. So, thank you for having me. I am an author, as you know, and this Born of Gilded Mountains is my fifth novel, fifth full-length novel, and my books take me kind of all over the world and all over time. We hop from World War II. My first book was World War II. Then we skipped to the Napoleonic Wars in the 1800s, and then the next book took us to World War One. And so I'm all over the place. And this one was kind of an interesting time. It was post World War II, just immediately after World War II. So I really love that about writing. I am, in addition to being a writer, I'm a mom of four. We have a pretty big span of ages, so we have all kinds of adventures going on all day long, every day, and it's such a gift. I don't take it for granted. Just grateful for every bit of this life. And that's me in a nutshell, writer and mom, pretty much.
I love that. And so we start with your book. We have a character who is very famous, has been on the silver screen, is very well known, and for some reason, but you don't know, as the layers peel back. It's like it basically layer after layer as you get deeper into the book.
Yes.
She leaves that life. There's a problem in Hollywood, and she heads to a very, very remote area with very interesting characters and ends up coming because there's a relationship she has with someone that used to live in the area that meant a lot to her. And so there's like a part mystery, part you see this deep ache in her, and you're like, where
Mhm.
did all of this come from? You see that she had everything according to the world, like the fame, the
Right.
very well known, and then she is all alone. So it's like immediately we jump into the book wondering who this character is. Mercy, that's her name, or at least her stage name,
Mhm.
wondering who she is. And then we have these childhood letters, which are so sweet. Pen pal situation that takes us back and the story unfolds. So you have like the modern day story of what's happening. And then
Mhm.
you have the stories that are being laid out in the book. So I would just love, like, where did this idea come from, and how did you? Because there's so many layers. I'm just like curious how you were able to like lay everything out.
Oh, great question. And I like the way you describe that as layered. It's interesting that just sort of that wasn't the plan to begin with. I didn't know it was going to take that format with some of its narrative, sort of traditional storytelling, some of it's through letters, some of it's through newspaper clippings, interview transcripts,
Or it's like screenplay type of
screenplay
thing.
for
Yeah.
a movie. Yes, exactly. And so they call that an ephemera novel. I think we tend to be pretty familiar with the concept of an epistolary novel, which is told through letters. So there is an epistolary element, but there's all this other ephemera too. And so as I was writing it, I was kind of looking at the time period, and the location. Starting looking at this remote mountain town in Colorado and what would be possible at that time. And of course, letters were an important mode of communication at that time, and especially in a remote place like that. And I just thought, well, who would be writing letters? And looking back at someone who's sort of a young adult age to mid adult age right after World War II, where would their childhood have taken place? That takes us back to the 30s and the Great Depression. And there's so many, as a historic author,
Hmm.
there's just so many big events that happened very close together in that time period. World War One, and then the Great Depression, and then World War Two, and then on and on. So there's so much to work with and so much to learn from. And these characters, these two friends, these schoolgirls, got connected through a pen pal program, and the story just kind of unfolded from there. And as I started to piece together possibilities for telling the stories through all these different modes of writing, communication, and screenplays, etc. What surprised me about that, and what really kind of was a unexpected joy, was that it, to me, it brings the reader in on a different level because it's almost
Mhm.
entrusting them to be a part of the storytelling, because you're giving them these pieces, and it's hopefully couched in, a way that makes sense, that unfolds in a way you can keep track of, so it's not just bombarding you with a billion things like confetti of ephemera, but it's more like, here is a piece of the puzzle and here is a piece of the puzzle, and getting to almost play with the reader in that way and bring them in that way was really fun, and it's something I haven't done before in a book, at least not in that particular way. So I really enjoyed that. And this, as I said, the story just unfolded from there. The mystery element took on its own life, sort of some riddles, like national treasure type
Mhm.
ciphers and decoding and chasing the trail. And, then you have to think, it's question after question. If that's going to be a part of the story, we have to ask and answer why. Why would someone write something in riddles? Why would it be like this? And so writing it was like a puzzle, and I think reading it will be hopefully an enjoyable puzzle to solve for readers. And that's sort of where the seed started. It all started with a falling in love with a location in Colorado and wanting to write a story there. And then it just, as you said, layer by layer, built from there.
I love it. I am actually so surprised that it started with a location. My dogs are growling by the way.
I love
I'm
it.
surprised they're playing. I'm surprised it started with location because the characters seem like they're so real and unique that I'm like, oh, for sure it started with these two girls. Like I just thought, like, of
Oh,
course, if you would ask me, because but I love it. I
oh, I
love
love that
that, and
too.
I love that because there's a mystery that Mercy's trying to solve,
Right.
and why she's moved there, why she's bought this old
Hmm.
mansion-ish type of
Yeah.
interesting place, and then there's the mystery of who is she? What's going on? I mean, we know kinda know who
Right.
she is, but who is she really? What
Right.
was going on? Why did she have to flee? And so there is, like, I remember one part, there's, like, a reporter, like a
Yep.
newspaper reporter, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I see what the world was thinking what was going on, but
Right.
also there was a conversation that I know that this other thing was going on." So what it is
Yep.
more like we're trying to solve it, even though obviously you have it
Yeah.
solved, but it's like we get to try to figure out and put the pieces
It's
together
true.
ourselves.
That's a good way to put it. There's sort of like a mystery on the front end, and a that Mercy's trying to solve, and a mystery on the back end of how did you get here in the first place. And they
Mhm.
meet at this moment in time, and we get to plunge in with her. And um, yeah, it was a fun thing to write. It was challenging but enjoyable, and I hope that it's enjoyable for readers too. Um, and you mentioned that you thought it would have started with the two characters, and in a way, I would say it sort of did start with a character, but it wasn't the two girls. It was this vehicle called the Galloping Goose, which
Oh.
is a real thing. I started looking into this area of Colorado, which is the San Juan Mountains, where you have towns like Telluride and Ouray and Silverton. It's a gorgeous area, and they have a very, very unique history with this. It's sort of a hybrid train slash automobile thing. And when I found out about those, I thought, this is begging for a story. And that's, so it did start with a character, but it was a car train thing character.
Car train. So the mountains and a car train thing.
Exactly.
Right.
You just never
Yeah.
know where a story's going to come from.
Yeah, and it reminds me of so what's Mercy's real name? I mean, you'd say that right from the beginning, so we know, like, we're not giving anything away. So let's talk about a little bit about that. So it's Mary Jane,
Mary Beth. It's
Mary
Mary
Beth.
Beth. That is her
Okay, that's
real
yes. Okay,
name.
I was like, it's
And
Mary
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so it's so interesting because I love also that time with the silver screen because,
Hmm.
it was where people took on stage names. They almost
Right.
had to, like, leave behind their other identities, which now we love watching, like, one of my favorite shows is, like, Finding Your Roots. So not
Oh,
only do
yeah.
you have, like, the person and, who they really are. Like, we love that, like, where they grew up, and, like, we wanna know the details about the real person, and then now, like, finding your roots takes celebrities and goes back to, like, your grandparents'
Wow.
life and your great-grandparents' lives, and so, like, we like that now, but back then, basically, they were like, "This is who you are." Like, they might get their
Right.
hair dyed, they might "This is your
Yep.
boyfriend." We're you know, this is like,
Yeah,
which
create a
is, like, we
whole
can't even
persona.
imagine now. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that.
Right.
I mean, I'm just so I love that. But that's not who she grew up. She's so
Right.
completely different. Kind of reminds me of
Very
like a Marilyn
opposite.
Monroe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did take inspiration, but I did a lot of research into that era of Hollywood and actresses like Marilyn Monroe and Judy Garland and Elizabeth Taylor, all all these people we know well from that age, and just what were their stories, what brought them to Hollywood, what was their sort of transformation, um, who were they before Hollywood, who were they during or after, and it really is interesting. And there's beautiful things about it, and there's hard things about it, and there's scandalous things about it. Just like a lot of corners of the world, and so that's something I wanted to explore of. And I talked to, in fact, I interviewed somebody in preparation for this book who runs a wonderful, amazing performing arts dance company in Colorado. And I just asked her, I just wanted to hear her heart, like, what is the magic of show business, for lack of a better term?
Mm,
And so I wanted to portray that, there is, of course, she had hard things happen she being Mercy, the character, had hard
yeah.
things happen in Hollywood. And there was corruption, but there was also this beautiful thing that happens of transporting somebody as we get to experience through story, to another time
Mhm.
where they feel seen and understood, and but also maybe come away feeling rested or inspired, or there's a little bit of magic in that. And so for Mercy, exploring sort of both sides of the coin of the Hollywood world was something I wanted to do with her. And then looking at, like you said, she came from roots that were extremely opposite of what Hollywood portrayed and created for her. She was a grew up in poverty and kind of caring for the person who should have been caring for her, a parent, and these things that she sort of felt robbed of as a child. Things that are typically a part of childhood, lullabies and sweet memories, and
That
somebody
part
cooking
with
for
the
you. Or
lullaby, I'm like, "Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm not crying. Yes, I am crying. No, I'm not crying."
it's to me, it's the details like that, like the
Yeah.
lullaby. Like, I will spend sometimes too much time, and I have to fix it during the editing phase of the book on the little details like that. But I wanted to explore that. What happens when you think your life will never have something you wish you would have had, but God can still come into that and fulfill that
Mhm.
desire in a totally unexpected way, in a completely different form. And that theme really ran throughout the story, and it wasn't planned. It just sort of happened and then went deeper
Mhm.
and deeper across characters. So I kind of like that about the storytelling experience, seeing where it takes us too as
Yeah.
storytellers, and hopefully the readers as well.
Yeah. Okay, you gotta show the cover because it
Oh
is
yes,
just so beautiful. Like, so
here you
beautiful.
go. I have post-it notes sticking out of it, so if you're
Yeah.
watching the video,
Ignore the
like
Post-it notes.
I love the cover too that Bethany
Yeah.
House did for this. They have the mountain scene, and then so it's all blues, like dreamy blues and greens because of the
Mhm.
mountains. And then at the top you have this glitter falling down, which I loved
Yeah.
because it hints at that juxtaposition of the rugged mountain life versus the glamour of Hollywood, and
Yeah, and
the
then you have
gold.
prospectors, like, right from the beginning,
Yep.
yeah, prospectors
Yeah.
seeking things, and it's
Yeah.
just
So
like
there's
a
that
yeah.
was fun to play with. Kind of, you mentioned the term silver screen. So we have the silver screen and the golden age of Hollywood, and you have these golden trophies, which I learned at the time the Academy Awards were because of the war and rationing and precious metals. They were made during that time of just like I think like a concrete, and then dipped
Yeah.
in a bronze or a gold, something like that. Um, anyway, playing with those themes across, okay, what is gold in Hollywood and what is gold in the mountains, and how does that, what kind of symbolism can we have going on there? That was a neat thing to explore as well.
So did you have the title? Because it seems like the title fits so perfectly. Did you have the title, like, when you first
No,
started?
no, I didn't. In fact, the whole time I was writing it, I was calling it either the Colorado story or I was just calling it Mercy Peak. Mostly in my head, I was calling it Mercy Peak because Mercy Peak is the name of the mountain, the predominant mountain in the range. And it's a
Mhm.
fictional peak based on real peaks. And it's also the name of the little town. And that happens a lot in mountain towns. They'll have a
Mm.
town that shares the name with a nearby
Right. Right.
range or peak. And you might think, well, wasn't that the character's name? Wasn't that her name? So there's a story there of why they're the same. It's not just that I was being lazy.
Yeah.
So, but no, I didn't have the title. That was done during the titling process with Bethany House. They asked for a list of themes and ideas and keywords, and they're actually the ones who landed on Born of Gilded Mountains and ran it past me, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It just felt just right.
Yeah. And then just even the cover, it looks like, I don't know, it's like, opulent, like, even the title with the cover is like, "Ooh, I could really just it's rich, and I could enjoy this," and I think it's very rich storytelling, so I just think that it seems like something you had planned from the very beginning,
Oh
the
well,
whole package of how they put it
that is
together.
that is serendipitous then, but I love that. I'm glad it feels cohesive to you. And
Yeah.
to me, I look at that cover and I think like the word that pops into my head is enchanting. It just looks so enchanting
Mhm.
what they did with it. I want to dive into those mountains.
Yeah, and so, okay, so I wanna hear, this is what number out of all the books that you've written, and then share some of your other titles
Sure.
that you've written.
Yeah, so this is novel number 5. Um, so I'll go back to the beginning and kind of walk you through the novel number 1. These are all with Bethany House Publishers. Novel number 1 was Whose Waves These Are, and that takes place on the coast of Maine in this rugged lobster fishing village, and sort of a similar thing where there's a mystery to be solved, and
Mm.
there's some stone ruins that this character has to figure out what was going on here because she figures out they weren't ruins in the traditional sense of a building being there and then falling into ruin. It was something somebody had begun to build and then stopped for an unknown reason. And so
Mm.
it goes from there. That's a World War II story. And then actually it's split time. So half is in World War II and half is present day. Then it switches back and forth. So the second book that came out was called Set the Stars Alight, and this one is about a missing ship. It goes missing in the 1800s. Very famous missing ship in England. Everybody grows up knowing about it, and there's this young girl who grows up wanting to solve that mystery for reasons of her own. And so through dual timeline storytelling, we discover um, there's something called forensic astronomy, which is where you use the
Mm.
stars to solve mysteries, like the placement of the stars. They actually use this to figure out like when certain battles took place and that sort of thing. They figure out where this legendary missing ship is and what the whole story is behind it, and so it's told through switching back and forth between present day trying to solve the mystery and then narrative of what was actually happening during that time to make this ship go missing in the first place and where it eventually ended up.
So
So
cool.
that one has a special place in my heart. Book number 3 is called Yours is the Night, and this one took place in World War One on the Western Front, so in France. And these soldiers, this band of soldiers, and a reporter and a chaplain, they hear this mysterious song in the woods, in the forest that's behind them, and they find this person, the source of the song, and they have to get her out of there because there's this very dangerous place to be at the moment. Right at the end, basically, of World War One, when everything was really coming to a head at last. And so they take a journey with her from the Western Front on foot to Paris. And so it's the story of them getting there and all of these adventures that unfold. And again, like backstory that plays into it. And um, that one's it's kind of a tender story. It's rugged and it's rough because it's wartime, but it's very tender too.
Mm.
And so then we skip over to Italy. This one takes place in Venice. It's called All the Lost Places. And this one is the story of a man who is hired to come to Venice to translate, to find a missing manuscript and translate it. And so as he's translating it and trying to find out what happened, he is taken all around Venice and is trying to discover things don't quite add up, especially with how history remembers things and tells things happening. And he uncovers the story of what really happened. And so this one, if you enjoy, kind of the mystique of a
Mm.
Venetian story and canals and islands and mystery, and a bookshop and a floating bookshop, kind of like how we have little free libraries or bookmobiles. There's a gondola that has a library on it.
Oh
So
my word.
it's
I
pretty
love that
fun.
so much.
I
Yeah.
had fun creating it. It's called the Book Boat. So those are the other books that are out, and then this one will be the next one coming out.
Yeah, and I love that there is, like, split time parts to it. There's
Mhm.
very rich history, very interesting locations. When you set
Thank
out
you.
to wanna write, I wanna hear a little bit about that story, but, like, is this what you imagined writing, or how did you get to the journey of where you are today? So, I guess, where did it start? Where did you imagine you would be? And how did it end up where you are? It's a three-part. Let's see how
Question.
well you can answer that
Yes,
three-part
no, it's
question.
great, and it's a long story, so I'm going to give you the condensed version. But
Yeah.
I've always wanted to write. I've always it's been a dream since I was a kid to write, especially for Bethany House, but really to write. And um, it was a journey. It took a long time. I wrote my first book, learned everything that I could, really just devoured every book about writing and the writing craft that I could get my hands on, and wrote my first manuscript, took it to a writing conference, and kind of thought, this is my one shot, because it was hard, to get to a writing conference. It's an investment of time and
Mhm.
resources, and I thought, okay, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And at that conference, the woman who had become my agent offered to represent me right there. And so I
Okay,
was
that doesn't
totally,
ever happen.
no, no. And I didn't expect that at all, because you hear people say, like, don't expect, they don't offer contracts at conferences. They don't. And she offered on the spot halfway through our conversation. And it's Wendy Lawton, who I love. She's my agent to
Mhm.
this day. And so I was totally taken by surprise, and I kind of wondered, wow, is it going to all go this fast? And absolutely did not all go that
You're
fast.
like, "I'm gonna have a contract, a 3-bit contract by the time I leave this conference the way
Right?
this is
Yeah.
going."
No, it was years, years, years of submitting projects and writing a whole other novel. And so I had two completed novels, and they kept, things would happen that looked hopeful, like there would be publishers interested, but either they ultimately decided against it, or they already had something similar contracted, or the fiction line closed, or many different
Mhm.
things that happened, to the point where I thought, maybe I need to take a hint. Like, maybe so many times these doors have closed that maybe I need to just be honest with myself and ask the Lord, like, is this what you even want me to do? Is there something different you want me doing with the time you've given me? And at that point, I was really ready to be at peace with that. And it was sad to think about, because writing is so much. I think as writers, we all kind of understand that writing is
Mhm.
part of how we experience life and the world and make sense of things. And so there was a sadness, but also a peace about it. And right then, my agent called and she said, hey, if you want to go to this writers conference in Texas, there's a scholarship available and it's yours if you want it. And I just thought, that's amazing, for one. And I
Yeah.
thought, but I was confused. I had thought I was maybe at the point where all the doors were going to keep closing. And my husband's the one who pointed out we were already headed to Texas those exact dates for a friend's
No
wedding. We
way.
already were. We were going to drive. We had purchased like a little camper, a tent camper, to take our little family across states, several states, to get to Texas. um, those same days we were going to be there. And my husband asked, like, honestly, what are the odds of that? I think you need to step through this open door. He said it differently
Right.
than that, but he was the one who
Yeah.
really encouraged
He's
me to
like,
go
"Come
ahead.
on,
Yes,
seriously."
yes. So I did, and that is where, long story short, things started to happen. I had put together a proposal, or not even a proposal, but a one sheet, a concept for a book that was unlike anything I had written. The others I had written and that we had been trying for years with were more historical romance, where romance is a really big part of the story.
Mhm.
So my books all have romantic threads in them, but
Right.
like they're not strong enough threads to carry the whole story. So there's mystery and there's other things going on. Um, so I had put together this one sheet for, which is kind of just like a page that pitches the concept in a pretty way with pictures and things.
Yeah.
Um, for this book that took place in Maine, and I took it there. It wasn't even written yet. I knew that a big piece of the story was going to be this poem that this lobster fisherman writes, and he hates poetry, but this poem just comes at him out of nowhere as part of kind of his grief process. And he sends it to
Mm.
the newspaper, and the newspaper publishes it anonymously, and then the next town newspaper publishes it, and pretty soon it's published across the world. And the gist of it was, send me, this is post World War II, send me a rock for the person that you lost in the war, because so many people lost somebody.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
will build something life giving. I will build a lighthouse. And that was the gist of this poem. And I knew that much about the story, but I didn't have the poem. So on the very last leg of the journey between Waco, Texas and Dallas, Texas, which is not that far,
It's
the
not
poem
that
just
far.
is not that far. The poem just came at me almost like fully formed, almost like it does to the character in the book. And so I was able to write it down, format it into my one sheet, print it out at, Kinko's or whatever was there at the hotel, and take it to the conference. And then that's where we had just suddenly a lot of editor interest and then some offers on it in the months that followed. And then that's how we got where we are today.
I love it, and it's almost like we have to get to the place of our relinquishment where we're
Right.
like, we're working so hard and we're trying all the things and we're learning and we finish these books and we're doing everything when it seems right. And then we're like, okay, we give up. And then God's like, okay, now I'm going to do something. And wait till you
Yeah.
see what I'm going to do.
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's humbling. And I think that's important, just to come from a place of, we really have to examine, why are we doing this? Whether it's writing
Mhm.
or anything else, why are we doing what we're doing? And to
Yeah.
examine that in our hearts and to know that it's not about anything, it's not about any kind of recognition, it's not about any kind of merit or um, anything like that. It's about, what is God trying to do in our hearts? What is He trying to teach us? How can we use that to serve others or come alongside others in their journey? And I honestly believe that for whatever our calling is, that applies to
Mhm.
writing, but it applies to so many other things too. And it's a freeing place to be too, because then you just get to be a part of that journey, and
Mhm.
that pressure of succeeding or recognition, like I said, or anything like that just disappears, because it's not what it's about anyway. Come what may, we just do what we do because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I love,
Yeah.
eh, I've quoted this 100 times, but, experiencing God said, "See what God is doing and join Him."
Mm.
And I think we know He's doing something to stir our hearts to become a writer because it's not easy, although it sounds really cool.
Right.
Like, it sounds
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I'm a writer." It's
Yeah.
hard and it's
It is.
rejection, and then it's like you pour out all these things and then you get a like Amazon review like it was just okay and you're like what or
I know.
whatever.
There goes 2 years of my life for someone
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it really is that point of relinquishment, but then also when we look at our stories, it's like God has to be present. I mean, I love that the
Right.
breath of God is inspiration. Like we
Yeah.
have God breathing into us in that form. That's the only way what we can write
Right.
make sense and can give
Exactly.
life. And I think it's even different that there's some great books out there in the secular market that are well written, but there's
Mhm.
not the life in them. It's just like
Mhm.
some of the ones that make the bestsellers list. I'm like, "Oh, I'll just try this. Everyone's talking about it." And I'm like,
Right.
I feel completely empty when I'm done. Like
Right.
there's
Just
no
almost like a hopeless
yeah.
feeling. Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit as we wrap this up about just the spiritual message because I think as a writer we all as a Christian writer there's we're doing this for more, right? It's
Right.
not just
Right.
to have well-formed story ideas and sentences and cool locations. So let's end with that about what is your
Sure.
hope as a writer that readers will walk away with after they read your stories.
I My deepest hope. would be two things: that they feel a sense of home because it is a small town story, and I think that that's something unique small town stories can offer. Other stories can as well, but it's there's something special about it, just a sense of belonging, and not just to give them an experience of a fictional small town where they felt at home for a little while, but also that through that fictional town and through these characters, they felt, I alluded to this before, but seen and understood, and maybe there's something
Mhm.
they can relate to and less alone. And so just a sense of home. And the second thing would be a sense of hope. So home and hope. And more than just hope, I would say hope restored, because that's a big theme of the story, which is, when all felt lost and things happen that there's no coming back from. Honestly, no going back and redoing it or rewriting the story of somebody's life, that hope can be restored. It's not contained by the boundaries or the shape of our life. God can write and breathe hope into any life, any circumstance, any story, no matter where we are, no matter how far along we are on the journey. He can do it, and it will look different for everybody. And I think that's beautiful, that uniqueness, that he will do that in a very, very personal
Mhm.
way for people. And so a sense of home and a sense of hope restored. And I talk about this in the author's note at the end, but as I stood back after the book was finished and edited, rewritten, all that, and then I saw what I mentioned earlier about that theme of restoration and
Mhm.
dreams that were long lost coming true in an entirely unexpected way. That verse came to mind of he will restore unto you the years that the locusts have eaten. And
Oh,
I just said,
yeah.
like, I just stopped almost breathless, like, look what God did. And I'm not trying to like exalt the story or anything like that, but I saw him working in ways I didn't realize at the
Mhm.
time that he was doing. And I feel like that's the theme that emerged. I didn't plan it, it just happened, but I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it was
Right.
him, you know, tugging on those story threads and speaking to my heart too, and I hope readers' hearts, that nothing's beyond restoration. It just might look different than we ever imagined. And so that's what I hope
I
that they
love
take
that,
from
and I
there.
love that I mean, I feel that the way every time I finish a book. I'm like, "Where did that come from?"
Yeah.
And that's like we are part of I mean, yes, it's like they're like, "How can you say that? You're the ones who wrote it." But no, you have to have God in you working, and there'll be something like a little thing that's just thrown in as a bit of a description or a
hmm
character. My last book with my son, well, it's releasing also on June 18th, but with my son,
So exciting. I'm
um,
very excited for it.
yeah, like, there was I wanted just a simple conversation that someone's getting ready to board a tram, and then that person that they had the conversation with, like, showed up later. I'm like, what's going on here?" And then showed up, and then in book 2 is a main character. It was like
Wow.
but all those things, it's like
Wow.
it just shows you that, like, we God is working in us and through us,
Yes.
and so that's the cool part of it is we get to be part of that, and so,
Right.
yes, we wanna have the book for the reader, and yes, we
Right.
really do want readers to enjoy our work, but
Yeah.
we have, like, so many stories, we could spend another couple hours just going back and forth sharing how God
Oh,
showed
totally.
up in the writing process.
Absolutely. It's intimate, and it's, like I said, it's humbling and it's freeing, and I think those are all good things. And I'm grateful, honestly, just for the journey and how it brings me closer to him. Every single book draws me nearer to him in a way that I didn't even know was possible, and I'm grateful for that.
I love that. Okay, so where can readers go to connect with you and to find out more information about this book and all your books?
Oh, I love to connect with readers. It's just so fun. It's fun to learn who's on the other side of the page of the book. Who's on the other end. So you can connect with me at amandadykes.com. So it's Amanda, just spelled the normal way, and then Dykes is Dykes, amandadykes.com. And from there, you'll find all the links to, first of all, the newsletter I send out, one sort of traditional newsletter a month that's like recipes and updates, and there's always a giveaway, just fun stuff. And then I send usually one additional letter a month that's more of just like a friend to friend letter, sharing thoughts,
Mm.
heart to heart. There's no fancy formatting or anything. It's just more like, um, like the friends in the book, a
Yeah,
friend writing
I love
to
that.
to somebody else. And those are really fun because I get to hear back from the readers a lot, and it's special to hear what's going on in their lives and the stories that they hold, and that's
Hmm.
treasure to me. So the newsletter, you can subscribe there, and then the other place I'm mostly active online is Instagram, and that link is on my website as well, or the handle is at Amanda Spins Stories, but there's an underscore between each word, so Amanda underscore Spins underscore Stories. And that's how you can find me on Instagram. I'm also on
I love
Facebook.
it.
It's the same post as Instagram.
I love that, and then also books wherever books are sold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Baker Book House is always a great place also to get
Absolutely.
books.
Yeah. And depending on when this comes out, if this comes out before June 18th, you'll still be in time to get the pre-order pricing and enter pre-order giveaway, which is also on my website. So they do a great discount and free shipping, and I love them. They are
I
my
love
favorite place
that.
to buy books from personally, too.
I love that. Well, Amanda, thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This was a joy.